Okay, today we're going to talk about setting in contemporary realistic fiction. Readers notice details about the setting of the story in order to picture it in their minds. So the setting of the story is important so that you can visualize what's happening in the story. In Hachiko Waits, the story is set in Japan. So in order for you to be able to picture it, you need to look up the Japanese words in the glossary that the author provides. The author also relies on illustrations to help you create a picture in your mind. So we're going to look at some of the details in chapters 3 and 4. And remember, the setting is an important part of the story. So the author needs to describe it in ways the reader can understand. Since the book setting is in Japan, a lot of the items the author refers to may be unfamiliar to readers from other countries. So we can rely on the provided glossary and our own research to help us visualize the story. This is an excerpt from chapter 3 of Hachiko Waits. Every hour or so, Mr. Yoshikawa went down to ask the food vendors if they had noticed Hachi sniffing around their booths in search of a snack. He bought a bowl of udon from a vendor, quickly gobbled down the wide noodles, and then spent the better part of his noontime break searching the neighborhood for Hachi. But he had not been able to find him. Okay, so I didn't know what udon was. Well, I did know what udon was, but you probably didn't know what udon was. So you can look it up in the glossary and see that it is wheat noodles. I then Googled a quick picture so I could get a better idea of what it was. And I also wanted you to see what a food vendor looks like in Japan. So at train stations and other public places, you'll see a lot of food vendors that you can walk right up to a counter and watch them prepare your food. So maybe this will give you a better idea of what it looked like around Shibuya Station, where Hachiko was waiting for Professor Ueno. This is an illustration from the book that you can see Mr. Yoshikawa standing in the train station, and you can see Professor Ueno. So it shows you the clock on the wall, and it shows you how crowded the station is. You can also see there is someone's foot with a weird-looking flip-flop on it, and that is referred to in the story, and that's called a geta clog. This is another excerpt from the book. It says, "Wan wan," he called to Professor Ueno, and then again, "Wan wan, wan wan." So when you look up wan wan in the glossary, it's woof woof, the sound of a dog's bark. So in Japan, rather than say woof woof or ruff ruff, they say that dogs make the sound wan wan when they bark. Here's another excerpt, and I'm not going to read this whole excerpt, but it refers to the train pulling up. It refers to a woman in a blue and white kimono, and it refers to young girls in matching blue skirts and white blouses. So I looked up some photos for you. The first one is a train pulling into a station in Japan. So that will help you visualize what the train station looks like, where Hachiko is standing waiting for Professor Ueno. The next photo is school uniforms in Japan. They're pretty standard, white blouses and blue skirts. And then the next photo, someone will look familiar in it, in a blue kimono. So a kimono is a robe that Japanese people wear often to festivals and other important events. But when this story was set, people wore them more frequently. You will see them every day in Japan, but not as often as people wore them years ago every day. Okay, and then this photo or this illustration, you can see some flags that look like fish at the top of the illustration. And that's important because they are hanging up for Children's Day. And Children's Day is a holiday that takes place every May 5th in Japan. It's referred to in the story as Boys' Day. And it's important to know that it's Children's Day because we know that this is happening in the beginning of May. This is happening in the spring. So Children's Day is on May 5th, and it's to celebrate children's happiness, and it's every year at the end of the first week of May. Okay, so hopefully all of this information gave you some clues as to what is happening in the story so that you can get a better picture in your mind while you're reading Hachiko Waits.